A lawyer tries to reconnect with his family and stay in his boss's good graces. Is it worth watching? Find out when I look at First Love on this week's Indy Christian Review. The odds are often against those of us who grew up in the church when it comes to staying with the faith. First Love tells the story of one such individual who, after growing up in the church, fell into a bit more of a lukewarm state. The story is primarily about Joe. As a kid, he was very competitive, athletic, and completely owned all of the Bible quizzes at Sunday school. Fast forward 30 years and Joe's married, has a teenage son, and has a successful career as an attorney. He has his eye on taking his boss's job as managing partner when his boss moves on to become a federal judge. But as his boss examines Joe to see if he'd be a good replacement, his probing unearths that Joe's relationship with his family is far from the best. Joe and his wife Catherine have become distant. Catherine has some baggage from her past that's caused some issues, plus she has aspirations for their son that don't mesh with Joe's. Meanwhile, their son, Michael, has problems of his own as he's trying to juggle voice lessons and figuring out what to do about this new girl that has a crush on him. Through it all, Joe's boss, Anthony Vero, and Vero's Aunt Rosa are manipulating, discipling Catherine and Joe towards a closer relationship with each other and with God, all while Vero is battling false allegations of corruption. And the sister of the girl crushing on Joe's son is scraping to make a living for her and her sister at a coffee shop, plus trying to keep her church's youth band running. Did you catch all that? There is a lot going on in this movie. Thankfully, the characters are all distinct enough that it's easy to tell who is who, and the story is structured in such a way that it's easy to follow what's going on. There are a lot of good themes throughout this movie of the power of prayer, God's providence, and the importance of showing Christ-like compassion on others. The acting is decent, and the characters are likable. The cinematography is pretty good, for the most part, and there are just some very enjoyable moments. However, there are some problems. As you could probably gather from the recap, there are a lot of plot threads in this movie. It almost plays like an ensemble piece, but as you get to the end, you kind of realize it doesn't really need to be. As the title would suggest, this really should be more of a story about Joe returning to his first love, in other words, God. But the synopsis on the back of the DVD explains that it's supposed to be a modern-day story based on the life of Peter, with Joe being Peter. And as the movie goes on, you can kind of start to see the parallels, especially as Joe is like Peter, and his boss, Anthony Vero, is like Jesus at the end of his ministry, passing on the reins of leadership to Joe. But this ends up creating something of a problem. I found myself wondering, is this supposed to have been an allegory? Or is it just kind of echoing themes? And was the focus more supposed to be on Joe rebuilding his relationship with his family? Or is it really more about Joe's journey to become the new leader of the law firm? And as we're introduced to the supporting cast, we get really detailed information into their backstories, almost to the point of I got to be a little confused as to who the main character was supposed to be at first. And as much detail as it gave, it also didn't give enough detail in other areas. Like, I really wanted to know more about some of the subplots, especially with Anthony Vero's whole thing with these allegations he was facing and assassination attempts and stuff. And unfortunately, the movie does end up being very talky with us hearing about things rather than seeing a lot of it. And while the cinematography was decent overall, there were a lot of instances where they crossed the line during conversations that I found very distracting.
For any of those in the audience who aren't filmmakers, crossing the line is a cinematography term that refers to the invisible line of action between characters. It's considered proper cinematography to keep the camera on one side of that line when cutting back and forth. If the camera were to cross over that line, it would create a visually jarring moment that could disorient the audience's perception of the space of the scene.
Thank you, Mr. Researcher. So yeah, like I said, it has its flaws, but if you overlook all the technical nitpicks, there are some really good moments and lessons that you can take away from it. The character of Joe does go on a very compelling journey that's very entertaining to watch. So overall, I would say The First Love is worth watching. And that's all the time we have. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like the show on Facebook, follow me on Twitter, and support the show on Patreon at patreon.com/storyteller. I am the Storyteller. May God bless you, and may God bless independent Christian films. Alright, Uncle Bob, let's figure out where Magic Max is gonna stay.
his friends
shall soon meet a bitter end. The book shall close forevermore
when they say Vale Relator.